Hello. Um, Now I think I'm gonna go to my screen. Share this dude. Get this out of the way. Admit. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Let's see if I can open up my panels. There we go. Now I can see who's trying to get in and win. How's it going?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I kind of got a little pressed for time down toward last week or so, but I'm good now.
Cool.
Yeah, I was just trying to see all what I can do in Zoom features here. Let me share two things at once. That's a bummer. Oh well. Yeah, all is well. We got a little hectic around here, and have some are just made it a little challenging to get all the notifications out that I would hope to. So I wonder if our numbers will be kind of low today.
Sure. Yeah, I know I didn't get any marketing beyond the tweet this morning, so apologize for that as well.
Oh, that's fine.
But
cool.
I don't know about you, but trying to get things together for a meeting lately has been a little bit difficult.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's definitely challenging. Yeah. Networking right now is hard.
Yep.
I mean, all conferences are, from what I hear, the majority of all conferences have already said that they're just going to be virtual this year.
Right.
Have you been to any virtual conferences?
I was early on in the pandemic. Like I did Magnolia JS because it was one of the first free ones. I did GitHub Universe. So like the one, and I did SneakCon as well. I guess so. But again, like it's impressive that they've been able to do so many free conferences, and the ones I've been to have been well handled. But gosh, it's got to be a lot of work to do that. Just knowing, even how much work doing this is.
Yeah. I just went to, I just participated in JavaScript test conference.
Oh, nice.
I don't remember what it was called.
Probably the one that I was wanting to get to, but I couldn't justify the time at the time. It was just a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, that one looked good.
Yeah.
I've been to 2 years of AssertJS, which was a conference totally dedicated to JavaScript testing. I haven't heard of anything happening this year. I don't know that they want to do that one virtually, but yeah, that one kind of came up on my feed that I was like, gosh, I should go to that one. So was it good?
Yeah, it was good. I think as far as like just pulling it off and the logistics of the whole thing, and I think they did a stellar job. They relied on what's that? Discord. They relied on Discord.
Oh, sure.
Quite a bit.
Okay.
And
nice.
Yeah, I thought it was good. They pulled it off. And then the talks just in general, I thought were pretty good. There were quite a few things that I I just wasn't aware of as far as new libraries and
Sure.
things you can mess with. That one talk that you sent me about the Justin Sears, I think is his
Searles.
name.
Yep.
That was phenomenal. That was a really good talk.
And that was Search.js. So
okay.
that was where that one came from.
Yeah, there wasn't anything as I would say I would put that in the category of like more philosophical. Like it's you trying to change your patterns and understand how you're doing this thing and why you're doing this thing. These were more like these talks were more like here's a handful of use cases and here's what this thing can do for you. But hey, Don. Just
how's it going?
Getting into it. I've got a silly issue that I've created for myself, and I don't know how to undo this. Everybody who wants to join this meeting has to be admitted by me. I don't know. Did I not set a password? I don't know what's going on. I did something.
If you go, there might be a setting along that bar down at the bottom for security or privacy or something to enable or disable waiting room.
No, I'm not seeing anything. I mean, but the waiting room, I don't know if the waiting room is on or not. And I definitely don't want a waiting room, right?
I think that's where you have to enable, or that's where you have to admit everyone.
Oh no, I'm able to admit everybody. That's not the problem. I want them to be able to go right in. I don't want to have to mess with letting people in. Darn, I can't make any edits to this thing while it's running. I'll figure it out next time.
What can I do for you to be helpful during the meeting? Since you'll be
I think that mostly I've got a good handful of pretty decent isolated demos. Nothing too fancy. I've got a couple of tests in there that'll help maybe put some conversation around. The majority of this will just be like, hey, here's this thing, and here are a bunch of examples of the thing, and I'm gonna try to make it as approachable as possible. But I'm not. This probably won't be that long or in depth since it's just an intro.
Sure.
But
sure.
I still think, and I'm also not going to get too in depth on the more advanced hooks, the ones that are like rarely ever used.
Sure. I'm going to mute myself for the time being to get a little dinner in me before we get started. But
yeah, no problem.
I'm here, so ping me if I can be helpful.
Cool. Dylan, have you messed with any of the more advanced use hooks?
The only hooks that I've done are use state and use context. I did one other, but I can't remember. And then Tegan and I, we did use ref, but there was one other. Tegan and I did do one for use window location, like a custom
Oh,
hook.
okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what that was for.
You definitely have used reducer. I mean, if you're kind of doing your own
Yes.
use context, then you have. Yeah,
Yeah.
the one hook that I'm really interested in messing with that I never have, and I'm not going to talk about it here, but use memo, which I think is kind of dope.
I just saw something about that.
Oh, yeah?
Our friend Mr. Dodds, I think it was. I just can't see Dodds on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's a dope concept. And I don't know, like I am not that fluent in other languages, you know, it's pretty much just JavaScript that I mess with. So I kind of just researched that one in other languages, the implementation there and what's up with it. And memoizing, I think I'm saying that right, is a pretty sweet way of doing things. It's kind of a really cool concept. I've never needed to do it, but I suppose it makes a whole lot of sense in a really big application.
The his tweet was in response to someone else, but he's got a link to it in his tweet. So
yeah,
that was 9 hours ago. It's funny you brought it up. I just saw it.
Really?
Like, yeah. So maybe that'll help. Maybe it will tell you, because the original tweet was, I rarely use these, one of which was use memo. And so I don't know if it,
Yeah, it is.
maybe you shouldn't use it, or I don't know.
Is that sharing my screen, by the way?
Yes.
It is, yeah.
Weird. It doesn't give me, I don't know which screen it's sharing.
We see Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed that for me, if I share a specific window, I don't get the green border.
Yeah.
But if I share a monitor, I do get the green border.
Oh,
So-
interesting. Maybe that's what I did. Maybe I shared I shared the monitor. I don't know.
No consistency.
Yeah, it's working, but whatever. Yeah, that's interesting. That's fun. Yeah, I find the concept of it pretty dope. It's kind of sweet. Memoize. Makes a lot of sense. I would like to use it. I want to find a use case where I need to use it, but I have not messed with it. I did have this fun thing to talk about too. I don't know if anybody is interested in upcoming features or just looking at new stuff that will soon be available. These are features for ES 2021. And they're not like, I don't know, they're not like hugely awesome, but they're kind of interesting. This first one, the logical assignments. This one, I do not know what to do with. This one doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's essentially NN equals or equals, and then this dude. I don't know if this exists in other languages. I'd be curious to know if anybody is familiar with these guys, but I'm not that familiar with it. And I mean, it goes over my head. I could not explain to you what these dudes do. But
sure, the and the / exist in PHP.
Say again.
I was just saying, I'm pretty sure and / exist in PHP.
With the equal sign after?
Oh no, I didn't see that. My bad.
Yeah,
Tiny
yeah,
monitor.
no.
Is that? Oh wait, never mind.
Yeah, that's the weird part. That these are new operators. These are brand new operators that you can start using in JavaScript that have never existed before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's weird. I don't. It seems cool, but and there's an explanation and there's a breakdown of it and there's a use case right there. But I mean, this makes
you-
sense. I have done this before, but this is buggy.
Can you throw that link in chat?
Yeah, I definitely will. Yep.
I feel like I've seen this before. I think I just Googled it exists in Ruby. So it's like if this thing on the left doesn't exist, then set it to
Is
equal
it like
whatever's on the
memoizing,
right.
Yeah, that I get that, Tori. That's yeah. I mean, if what this example here is saying is these two are comparable, then I understand this one completely. But I just have and I do get it to mean that. I just
Mhm.
I've never seen it. But that's cool in Ruby, eh? That's kind of dope. That's the one language that I should have known. I would chat these dudes out, but oh, there's my chat. Okay. Yeah, so this is, and we can go through more of these too. This is this one. So this one is kind of interesting. New operators, this logic operators, critical. This one, very obvious. This is like an odd use case though. It's like I'm surprised that this was such an issue that they needed to give a fix for it. But everyone's familiar with replace. We're just saying find the instance of and replace it. But if you wanted to do more than one, you'd have to go through this complicated regex, and like nobody knows regex except for Stack Overflow. Like that's the only place you can get regex from. So nobody's ever going to do this. So what they came up with is the solution to say just replace all. So this one I get. That's an easy concept to get. Yeah, I do find myself doing this. I don't think I've ever done this one, but yeah, I've had to do this before. That comes up quite often. The other one, this one is like way over my head. Weak references. I have never really heard the term weak before within programming. I'm just not familiar with what that would even allude to. So this is beyond me. And I mean, I've skimmed through this. I haven't given it that much brain power, but I really have no idea what this is. I don't know what's happening here. It seems kind of awesome. Seems like something you'd be able to like. Maybe it's like a shallow reference. I don't know if that's like the only thing I could compare it to. I really have no idea. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with what this is, but it has very little support.
You mean it has weak support?
Oh,
Just
burn.
kidding.
Nice. This one seemed useful. Before you have regular promise all settled and then all, and now you have or you have all settled and any. Two new guys in here, and essentially what all settled is saying is like if I give you an array of maybe 5 APIs, we're just going to wait till they all either pass or fail. Once that's done, then we run our then. With any, it's like at least one of them passes or fails. Maybe you can set the conditional, but then it runs the then. So that one's probably useful, unless you use GraphQL or something and put up a pass multiple promises. And then this one I think is dope. This one's actually really cool. I just got finished like building a calculator app, and boy, looking at long strings like this sucks. So why not add commas, right? That's not a comma, but you can read it as a comma. And I don't really get. I didn't read this that in depth to know how you actually is there like a JavaScript like format number that would do this for you, but that's readable. And anyway, I just came off of building a calculator, so I'm like, yeah, that's kind of nice. What is this here? Oh, in Node. Interesting.
Yeah, that's Node.
They saying it's like it works if you're gonna run this in a like a testing environment or something, maybe. I don't know that, or just on the server. It works if you run it on the server, maybe. Maybe that's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
Anyway, that was 5 kind of fun small distractions, I guess. I will post that out in chat, and anyone can look those up on their own if they would like. All right, y'all. I think we should probably get down to it. I'm here to talk about hooks. But before we get there, I'll give you just a short intro for anybody who is new to who we are. We are 2 joint user groups in the Greater Des Moines area, Web Geeks, Des Moines Web Geeks, and Des Moines JS. We've kind of joined forces to help, help plan and organize these events, because it's getting fairly challenging right now. I think everybody's kind of up against it, and this is no exception. And so it's very nice to have some help right now. Tori, who's on here, and Matt as well, help as well as Josh and Josh Larson and Matt, and I don't believe either of them are on the call today, but if you hit us up on DSM Web Geeks or DSMJS on our Twitter or on our Facebook or however, you can talk to and meet all of us. We would love to hear from you as well. If there is ever anything you are interested in learning about, if you yourself want to give a talk, please hit us up, and we can either craft an event around something that we all want to see, or we can we can give you a platform, and you can share your experience with us. Small talks, fast lightning talks are fine, or even longer talks. And then we also do kind of a format that you'll see here a bit tonight. This is kind of like a workshop, essentially. It's just a hands-on working session. We call it Dojo, but it's essentially, we'll look at some code together and do our best to figure out and collectively come to an opinion on a framework or an aspect of this language, so that we can all understand it a little bit better, and hopefully be able to use it whenever we need to. I think that's all. Well, I will also say we do have a meeting, one meeting every month. Typically, it's around the second Monday of the month. Our next month, we don't have anything planned yet. So if there's anything you're interested in, let us know. We will hit you up on the various platforms we are on. DSMWebGeeks.com, DSMJS, and I'll actually throw these out into the chat so that you guys all can have links to it. DSMJS, DSMJS.com as well. And then let us know if there's anything you'd like to talk about, and see you next month. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we'll do is use a kind of a new tool. I mean, it's an old tool, but I haven't used it in settings like this before, so that'll be kind of a learning experience for us. I'll post this in chat, and hopefully y'all can actually, instead of posting this guy, I will post this in chat. So this is the repo to a lot of the example code that we can look over tonight. You have two options. You can pull down that repo and you can run it locally. The instructions are in the README. This is a very simple create React app, nothing too crazy going on there. If you would rather not mess with your local environment, or if you are somehow watching this on an elevator screen or some crazy method, and you can't run this code, maybe you could open up a browser window and just go to our the code sandbox. If you're not familiar with that, that's essentially a very basic IDE, text editor, very similar to Visual Studio Code running in your browser. And the link to it is right here in the repo. And so you can pop open that code and you can follow along, or you can play with the code on your own. You could fork it, and you can do whatever you want with it. I'm pretty sure that like you would have to log in and actually to save anything. I believe you have to log in, but if you just want to play with it, you can, and you can log in with even your GitHub credentials. Anyway, it's a really slick application, not application, IDE in your browser. I'll start off by saying too that my name is Justin Stevens. I've been learning React for like 5 years now. Started off writing in classes along with everybody else, and then slowly migrated over to using hooks, kind of along the time frame of when all that stuff was brand new to React. Okay, so hopefully whoever wants to have that code in front of them has it. Otherwise, we can just look off of what I have. So all right. So I will kind of orientate you with code sand really quick so that we're all familiar with what's going on. They used to have a way to collapse the file. They don't. Yeah, they do. Okay, cool. I will leave the file menu open though. Okay. So what's going on here is you have your browser, obviously, to run your code. There are tests right there to run your code. The selected file is right in front of you. And then you have the file system on the far left here. You can mess with a whole bunch of other settings in there, but for this purposes, you don't need to. The only thing I will say as a gotcha to using this as like any kind of formal text editor is it does not support GitHub very well. It does not allow you to switch branches, and that kind of is a huge downfall of it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you can't ever go back to the branch you were in. But whatever, it is beyond. Aside from that and some other quirks, a pretty darn cool application. Okay, so let's have an introduction to React hooks. Hopefully, a lot of you are familiar with React just in general. It's been around for a very long time. What I'm going to try to do is give you a good overview of the most common use cases with the hooks that are built into React that you will probably be using the most, and try my hardest to give you a good understanding of how to use them and when to use them. And then we'll go into to custom hooks. custom hooks are probably the main way that you will be writing your React components. Just give you a bit of background on how we got here. Hooks are kind of an answer to the headaches of your class-based components. And I have an example so we can see how class-based components used to work compared to how they work as a functional component using hooks. And we're going to look at that in our a state example. So use state is one of our hooks. These are like our basic hooks that are built into React. This is something that is exposed and you have access to. So essentially all this is very, very simple little button counter. Nothing fancy. It's a component that takes a hit state or a hit event and it increments the state within the button. So you can see in this little demo that I've listed where you find this code at. So it's in hitcounter.js. You can go over to your file system and you can check out hitcounter. And I do it to where it's the index within that directory. So I can open that up. And I've got my hit counter. And I will show you real quick how this is mounted. So maybe it makes a tiny bit more sense and gives you some context around it. So so everything over here on the actual screen that is visible, this is all being rendered through a giant file called app.js, right? This is the demo. This is just straight up the holder for a whole bunch of little demos. Okay, that's all that's going on. And just a forewarning, like I'm not writing perfectly awesome code here. And I'm not showing you like the best practices in a lot of the things I do. I'm just straight up trying to give you a good demo so that we can kind of see all these elements in concert and understand them better. So let's go down to where this component is pulled in. And this is pulled in as our hit counter. And it has a prop of button text, and it's just some random text. It's, that's the text that shows up there. So because I'm just pulling it in as the hit counter, and you can see that I'm importing it as the default, right? So I'm exporting it as the default, but here I'm saying counter, and here is my counter class. So before we start looking at hooks, let's look and functional components. Let's see where we came from. So this is how we would traditionally build a class, right? You have quite a bit of like boilerplate upfront code that you would have to put inside of a class. I'm not messing with constructors. I completely skipped constructors when they were a thing. Anyway, you have your state. You have a click handler here that says this, and then set the state. This is actually like passing in its previous prop, and then we're incrementing our state. Nothing challenging. This is pretty easy. And every time it's clicked, it's going to hit this and my method that I defined right here. So super simple, really easy code that's going on here. That is actually the code that's running that class. So I rewrote it, and in my new class, I'm actually calling it, or my new function, I'm actually calling it hit counter. So let's export the hit counter. And this dude ought to update. And when it does, yeah, I think it updates pretty fast. It's a hot model reload. So once it does, you can see it's the exact same thing, right? So the difference here is we are now using, we are no longer a class. So I'm not using the component out of React, and I'm not extending anything, right? I'm just a straight up component. A functional component with a capital H. This when we used to write our apps back in the days of class, you would write a component and say, will this be a class or will this be a regular function? And you kind of had to like teeter there. Do I go through all that extra garbage of pulling in all this boilerplate, annoying extra stuff, this extra syntax, or can I leave it as a functional component and not ever have to change it in the future? Well, you don't really have to worry about that anymore with functional components and hooks. You can just always write this syntax. Everywhere in your code will just look like this. And you can see how this, since each method within this function is its own thing, right? It just it has its own props being passed to it, its own arguments being passed to it. You can even break up this small little component even further by extracting these guys into something else and then importing them somehow. So this really small component here now can be broken down and split up and made even smaller, much easier than we could have done with our class-based components. So that's kind of like a comparison of class versus functional components. There may be more to be said about lifecycle. We will get into that a little bit later. There's really not many other headaches or gotchas with converting a class to a functional component. The only other thing that I would say is you don't really have to do that. React is not going to sunset classes, and classes may be appropriate for a certain pattern and fine to use because it just makes sense there. I personally, I just wrote an application in nothing but hooks. I didn't touch classes at all, and I see no, like I didn't lose anything. Personally, I would much rather write things with as functional components with hooks from now on. I don't see a reason to ever write classes again. But it's up to you, I guess. You can do either way. I do not think React is going to force you into writing only functional components with hooks. Okay, so if there's any questions about any of this stuff that I'm throwing at you, please feel free to chime in and yell at me and ask. A good chunk of this will be kind of I just want you to be able to walk away with a good understanding, play with the code that's in front of you, and let's just make sure that you get you're able to code in hooks by the end of this. That will be awesome. So let's look at use state now, and we'll back to our example. So essentially, what's going on here is this hook. This is like a basic hook from React, is taking in an initial state at this part right here, and its initial state is 0. Inside of this method, it's going to return an array. And if you know how array deconstruction works, the first item in the array you're not going to rename it. It's just the first item in the array. So I have it here as count, but it can be anything you want because that always maps to the first item in the array. That's the same with set count. This is the second item in the array, so I can name it anything I want. That's always the second item in the array. Count, the first item in the array, is going to be your actual state. Your state is being returned to you. And then your second item in the array is this is like the method that will update the state. And so this functions very similar to set state. It's pretty darn similar. Like I've read a ton on the differences between the two, and like the only thing that they keep saying is something with merging your objects. Like set state would automatically merge your state for you, and use state will not. And I personally, I guess I just never ran up against that because I've always managed that myself. And maybe it's a little bit better of a guard against mutating your state because it forces you into a better pattern. But I honestly, functionally, I haven't seen much of a difference at all between set state and use state. And I dwell on this kind of a lot because you will be using the heck out of use state. Like that's the main hook that you will be using aside from use effect. Anyway, aside from this being a class up here and this being a functional component, there's really nothing else going on. And I have a test for this guy, and it's passing now as our hit counter. And then if I switch it to counter, when it loads, it's running, it'll pass as well. So it passed just fine. It's the same component, nothing crazy going on, even though the logic inside is a bit different. This is a pretty easy testable dude too. You can take a minute and look through my test if you'd like. I will say in our tests here, there's this 2 tests that are failing. And that's, I swear, an issue of code sand and nothing I'm doing. I don't know what it is. One of the dependencies is just not importing, but it does if you run it locally. So and I don't care to sit and dwell on it too much further. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the tests that I wrote for this. I just wanted to have something out there for y'all to see kind of how you would write tests for some of these, because it can get tricky on your custom hooks. And throughout this, I believe I'm always using testing library. I might have one example in here of render test renderer, I believe is the name of it. That's kind of like a more low-level testing framework. I kind of like it better, to tell you the truth. Like I enjoy the way I can read my objects and traverse them through kind of a JSON tree. It's something that you would really have to use that testing library to understand the difference between these two. To me, the biggest difference in testing library was how I'm targeting my elements. Had a lot to do with like screen readers, just making sure like I'm selecting this object or this element by role here. There are other ways to select it, but I was able to choose a role, and just ensuring that this button really is a button. And you'll notice that in my, I'm actually using a button here, but if this were a div, I would have to give it the role of button, and then that's the proper way to do it anyway. So it forces you, testing library kind of forces you into a good pattern. Anyway, we can move away from that dude and go back to our next example. And next we're going to look at another use case, more practical use case of use state. And this one is in a component called member list. And essentially what we're doing here is we're just, adding to the list and removing from the list. Really nothing too fancy there. And the component isn't all that fancy either. It just points out like 2 major kind of like, I don't know. This is the point where the use state kind of seems magical. I have 2 methods that are use state, stacked on top of each other. One is pulling in props for my initial state, and the other has an empty value. And they are both, they're both states that I can pull from and do whatever I want with. What's actually happening here is React is loading up these states like kind of in an array in an order, in the order that you define them. And it's keeping track of where all that is and how to retrieve it and everything you need. If you ever change the order during render or during whenever your component is mounting, you break it. Like it does not work. So you can't put these, you cannot put the use state or any hooks in certain, like you can't put it in a loop. You can't put it in a non-React component, stuff like that. It seems a little bit magic-y, but it's really not too bad. And the more you use it, it kind of blends into the background and you don't really even care anymore. So in this example, I'm just updating the list, and I don't think in here I'm doing anything really too interesting, except for so where I'm actually updating it. This is on line 18, update list, and I pass it in my my object here. And this is an example, kind of an important example of how you would update nested state. So you still had to do this in class components, right? But the same thing happens here. You need to first, spread operator, merge in your old state with everything, and then you would update the specific object, by key, and you'd spread operator merge in his old content, and then update whatever you need to. That's all still the same. This pattern is still there. You would have to do this before, you'd have to do it now. It's really nothing too bad. But this kind of updating of really complex state is a pattern that you don't have to do anymore. This is something that you can actually move away from now if you would like. And actually, this is kind of what React would prefer you do. Instead of having complex objects like this in your state, what you should be doing is having a use state per object. You would break it all out with a whole bunch of different use states. And obviously, you can't do that all the time. This is a prop coming in from something completely else. This is not this component's local initial state. So I didn't have that option here, but really what you'd want to do is chunk things out into their own. It just makes it way more easy to select the state you want and update specific state, stuff like that. Beyond that, I don't think there's anything else in here that that is too tricky. Okay, so now we're going to check out kind of the same example, but now we're going to check out the use reducer for this. Okay. Okay, so use reducer, very similar to use state, except if you've ever used Redux, this is more along the lines of how you would write Redux reducer. It's going to take in your dispatch, or it's going to return your state and a dispatch or some method to update, very similar to how use state did. But in between there, you can kind of write logic to manipulate your state or do whatever you want. So I would, here's my reducer, right? And so if we can see how we're actually using this, here's the dispatch that I call. I give it a type, and the payload is my actual, object of state that I'm manipulating. And it's going to first go through this function that is a switch case, and it's going to match up the action based on whatever I handed it. So remove member, and then it's going to mutate its state and do all the things, and then grab the payload and well, in this one it's adding the member by name, and this one it's removing. So this whole function here is logic that could be removed out of my component, and so then my component would now be just a view, and then the actual logic or the controller, if you will, is taken out. So now we can move to more of a traditional MVC if we wanted, and then your model is your state in that example. But anyway, so I believe this still works, and there's the dude who we can remove. So both of these used a very similar tactic. One was just using use state, and the other is using use reducer. When you use either or is up to you. It just depends on how complicated you need it to be. They're both valid. Okay, so that's it for the most common ways you would be manipulating state. So now we can look at side effects. So in classes, in class-based components, we had the life cycle, right? So now we don't necessarily have life cycles, we just have side effects. So these things are happening and then something is triggered. So it's very similar to a set timeout or a function that's going to happen after a given event. So instead of after it mounts, this fires, it's more of like after this renders, it's firing. Okay, so in our example here, we're going to detect if a thing is online or offline. So I'm going to open up the online status. And let's see if I can switch this dude to offline. Bam. So he just went offline. And that's really small type, and you guys probably can't read that, and I apologize, but just to throw this out there, this whole styling of this dude is minimal MVP CSS. I forget the exact name of it. You can see my dependencies here. MVP CSS. It's just like I don't have to use any classes, and it just styles everything for me. So I have no classes at all. It's just styling the pure elements on the page. So anyway, this can now detect if I'm online or offline. So I'm going to go back to online. There we go. So here's an example of how this use effect is working. So the use effect is called in my online status functional component. It initially, this is kind of like the bulk of it right here. It's attaching these event listeners to the DOM. It's doing a return. This happens after the component is, if you will, unmounted. This is my cleanup. This is going to remove my event listeners from the DOM. And then we pass another argument here, which would be my dependencies to listen for. So this component is doing the work of all three lifecycle components that you would have to use, like component did mount, component did update, and component will mount. So if you want to equate these two, you could almost say that this is your component did mount. You could say that this is your component unmounted, and this is where you would handle your did update function. But it's like I wrote this, and I wrote 3 components, or 3 things that you would have to do in class-based structure, and you would just have a whole bunch more code. This is much more succinct, easier way of getting things done. And so there's not a whole lot here to dig into, but let's go to this other code in the chat box, JS. And we can see how this now is dependent upon a dependency coming through. And once it listens for that, once it hears that dependency change, then we will actually do a thing. So this guy is going to say hello to me. And bam, he just did. So it's essentially just waiting, a few seconds, and then it will fire that function. But it didn't fire it until message changed. Message is a prop that I'm passing down. So you can listen to your props, or you can listen to your state. If any one of those are listed as a dependency, and those dependency change, then this function gets fired. Okay, I don't think there's too much there we can dig into. So unless anybody has any questions about use effect, I'll move on to the next. But I will say, like, use effect is definitely along with use state, something that you're going to use a lot. Okay, so let's check out context. Context is probably something I don't know that you'll get into this a whole lot. This has very specific uses. It's really awesome, but it may not be utilized as much. It can, paired with some other things, do some very, very awesome, useful things for you, but it's not as common as the others. So let's go look at this first component. I'm calling it global value, and this one also is probably the hardest to initially wrap your head around, and then it kind of makes sense once you get it. So global value. We'll look at that. Okay, so so this is just saying, here's my 42, 42, and oddly 42. Essentially, what we're doing is we're mounting this component. This is the global value is what's actually here. It is pulling in number context from this file right here. And the magic is right here. We're creating a context. We're creating a context to be used and provided specifically to any child or grandchild or whatever you want component within your application. We can pass it down as far as we want to a specific component. This right here kind of removes that necessary higher order component that you had out of classes. So this cleans up your code a great deal with that not being there any longer. So here I have this as my create context. I'm calling it number context, and I'm giving it a value of 42. My create context is then wrapped. All create context has like a provider and a consumer method that it exposes. There's 2 objects that come out of it. You can then give it a value to override, and that's why I'm ending up with 42, 42, and then 42. This is like resetting the new value of that dude. But anyway, once I make this my global, so this just wrapped around all of these components. Now everything below it has access to it. And so my header and my display. And my display is right here. You can see that. So this pattern is kind of awful. That's a little bit ugly to have to write. And you like literally have to write it this way to where it's it's passing the value in like this function weird way. Like this is kind of awful. This would be an annoying deal if you had to do this all the time. So this is not a preferred pattern. But you can also pull it out of the actual context that you export, and you define elsewhere. And so I'm using it in the footer component, and because it's coming directly from the source here, that's why it's spelled as 42. It's using that value. And so now to actually use it, I just deconstruct it and pull it out of number context, and I use context again, and I just pull the value out of there, or I just name it value, and then I print the value. So this is a much cleaner and easier way to use versus wrapping everything in these consumer objects. But you have two ways to do it there. We can, so that's like the very basic way to use context. In a very simple method like that, or pattern like that, I don't know if that has a whole lot of value to it. So the next really kind of awesome pattern that you can write this as is almost like a Redux. It's not quite Redux because of course Redux is its own library. It's not it's not built into React, and Redux in itself just has a whole bunch more niceties and great things that it provides. But this does feel a lot like Redux, and it gives you all of the easy stuff. About the 90% of use cases that you would use out of Redux are all right here. So this one's a little bit more complicated. I put it all into one file, and then this guy over here. And so hopefully this isn't too challenging to read through. We can go down and look at our the initial component that's going to mount this dude and set everything up. So we wrap our slider component. That's this guy right here. We wrap him in our store provider. So if you're familiar with, or if you remember from how we set it up in our global value, we're wrapping in a provider, we're setting that up so that we can pass the prop down wherever we want. This is also a very similar pattern to Redux. So let's look at just slider really fast. Slider, which is that component right there, is pulling in its context, just like we did last time. It's coming from what we have labeled as the store. And from the store, we're taking out the store provider and the actual store. In this use context, we're taking our state and our dispatch, and we're writing a function here that will dispatch for us and apply the appropriate values and keys. And you can see that our dispatch has a type. So it's just update data, but very, very simple. And then this dude down here, this view logic, is just a very simple slider, range slider, with an on change event that fires this method. Okay, so now let's go look at store. So this is a setup that is very similar to Redux. We have our initial state. We have our reducer. We have our store that we're creating. And we even get, which is kind of awesome, this is the let's say if you wanted to store your state inside of a session or local storage or a cookie or whatever you want, you can then pull from that and load up your state initially before the component actually mounts. So if you look here, I have and I forget what I named it actually. It's in here somewhere. There's a whole lot of stuff in here. Oh yeah, because this is the code sand deal. There's actually a ton of stuff in here. Oh, there it is right there. There's my local store, and here's the slider value at 80. So every time now, whenever I refresh the page, it's going to remember that value. That's kind of awesome. That's a pretty sweet deal. That's all right out of the box with React. So now you are, if you need a very light version of Redux, this is awesome. This is perfect. Then you're not beholden to Redux at all. React can change and do whatever it wants, and you don't have to wait for Redux to catch up. And most of the time, most of the use cases that people are using Redux for are sometimes the wrong reasons, and this is there for you to solve and just be an easy get. So anyway, I can finish going through this, dude. We set up the store, and then we set up this store provider. And this is actually what's going to make everything available to us. It even has a use effect in here to set the initial state from our local storage. Yeah, I don't know if there's any questions about that. This one is kind of dense, and you really need to have some familiarity with exactly what is going on here. But it's pretty darn powerful in a very few lines of code. And I didn't show you the reducer. This is the reducer, very similar to the reducer that we used in our complex member list update. So anyway, yeah, I don't know if there's any specific questions on context. Context is kind of tricky, but certainly very, very easy to throw together. Much easier than Redux. Redux to me always seemed very hard to wrap my head around. This is actually even more easier to understand than Redux is. Okay, so I'm going to kind of finish up here looking through our custom functions, our custom component, or custom hooks, sorry. I'm not personally like the best at writing custom hooks. Though my philosophy has changed a tiny bit. I think if you are writing within your component, so I'll just go back to one that we did a little bit ago with this counter, state counter. And like I was saying before, if you're writing anywhere in your component and you find yourself using even the very mundane and basic hooks, there's no reason not to make this a custom hook and extract it out of your component. And you probably should just be doing that all the time for all of your hooks. Everything should be a custom hook. And the more you do that, the easier your components are going to be to test. Like they'll be very easy because you've now split everything up into such tiny little chunks that you can put a unit test on it all. Custom hooks, though, can be a bit challenging to test, and so we can look at that. So this is use dark mode, and if I click it, so this dude is just going to tell us dark light, dark light. The actual function is up here with switch theme. And really, that's not even the actual, the honest way to be doing switch dark mode. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's actually a media query that will actually do dark mode for you. So But so then we can dig into this dude and look at it a bit closer. So use dark mode. Is right here. And we will also look at a test for this dude. Okay, so this code here that I have highlighted, everything above line 28 is the actual custom hook. Okay, you can see I'm not doing much here that's really all that tricky. I have a use state that I'm grabbing. This is my kind of like custom function for this dude, and then I'm using use effect, and then the magic here is I'm exporting my object. So my theme. This is, you can export whatever you want inside of your use effect. I'm inside your custom hook, but this is my theme, and this is a method to toggle the theme. The thing I've built down here is as a component to show kind of an example use case. You don't have to do this. The only reason I'm doing this is because it actually makes it really easy to test when you do this. It shows functionality, and I can import that and test against that in a test that I have. And then I'm making sure that I'm testing my hook. You regardless of how you write your test, you have to mock a hook. And React test library actually gives you the ability to mock your hooks, and so that's really easy. However, if you were going to use something, and it's all in this commented code down here, but if you were going to use something like React Test Renderer, they don't have a built-in feature for mocking your hooks, so you have to do it for yourself. And I don't know, there's multiple ways that you can handle it. It gets kind of tricky, whatever. So in this example, I just built out a demo that actually mocks out the hook for me. And then I pulled that in. Anyway, the test isn't passing purely because it's just not getting some part of the library, which it's listed as a dependency. And so I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but that is like a issue with CodeSand, because I promise you it works locally. So, but it doesn't matter. The only takeaway there, because I'm by no means an expert on testing, the only takeaway there is just that if you're going to test your hooks, your custom hooks, you have to mock them. So yeah, and there's nothing too complex with this dude. We can look at another custom hook that gets a little bit more complex and probably is a little bit more of a common use case. So this is fetching data, and it's actually working already. The lorem ipsum text right here is fetched from a network. Is making a network call. So we can open up that dude and check it out. So so I'm using Axios, and let's go see also, in addition to this, how I'm using it. So use that. This again is my app. This is the big white collection of demos that you see here, and I have right here. So it's pulled in as fetch data, and it gives it its endpoint. And it's just so you could so this is like the real beauty of a custom hook. You can use this anywhere you want in your code. You can use it however you want. I'm using it as an actual component here, but it can take in your initial value, and then use effects, do whatever you want, and then spit out. I'm spitting out, in this case, just the return of my my URL, my data that I'm grabbing. This is pretty simple example of a hook. Nothing really fancy going on here. It's not spitting out like actual component. It's spitting out just text, or just the string of text that I'm then iterating through and spitting out into there. We can also look at the test for this, but again, this test isn't working, and it's not working because of this mock network. Like Axios isn't loading, Axios mock adapter. But if you haven't used this before, this is pretty useful. This has nothing to do with React hooks, but it is a pretty darn useful way to test your components. This one test is a pretty good example of a lot of the features that you can get with your testing library. If you ever want to look through it and check it out on your own. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is reusing hooks within your application. So there is a ton of like libraries out there that just go out and collect all these hooks, all these really cool custom hooks, and this is one of them. It's kind of small, but it's still pretty cool library of just collection of React hooks. And this dude's really simple. Let's see if I can find it. Reuse it. This is change title. So this is just being mounted in the app.js, and it's pulling from React use, which is a library that I'm a dependency that I'm pulling into my project, and it's grabbing the use title out of there, and it is updating the actual DOM as you type, whatever it is here. It's not going to update this title because this is inside of its own, iframe thingy, so that it won't work. But anyway, this is like one of the huge advantages of custom hooks is, once you get like something awesome like your fetch data hook, you can now reuse this wherever you want. And so this is where it's actually used, but here's your fetch data hook. So once you write this in one of your projects, you can really easily reuse this anywhere else. Or you can pull it in from a library and use it all over the place. Your code reusability like exponentially increases when you start using custom hooks. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to run over with hooks for y'all. The only other things that I would hint on would be all the other hooks within that are like the built-in hooks with React. We touched on a few of these, but and you might also see yourself using useRef quite a bit. That's where you're kind of like well, ref in class-based based components was an actual thing, and so this is very similar to that concept where it's just a reference to the DOM element. Anyway, there's a few other really good ones here. Hopefully, understanding the basic dudes, you kind of get the concept of these guys as well. Writing in functional components, using hooks, reusing hooks. It's certainly a bit of an architectural mind shift into how we used to write our class-based components. But ultimately, your code is definitely going to improve. You are going to write less boilerplate. You're going to duplicate your components a lot less. You have to write a lot less repeating patterns in your code. It's on a whole kind of an awesome transition. It's a really cool thing to get into. I don't plan on going back and changing or modifying any of my old class-based components. I kind of think that would be a little bit silly to do. But I have tried it, and it's actually really simple to convert from a class to a functional component with hooks. Depending on how tricky, obviously, your code really is. So anyway, that's kind of it for my talk. I don't know if y'all have any questions or if there's anything you want me to go back over or what. Please shout out or hit me up. And if not, I will stop sharing. Cool. Well, yeah, that's kind of all I got. So I don't know if there's anything else you dudes want to go over.
I got one quick question for you. It's not probably React related, but JavaScript syntax related. In member list on index line 36, the question mark, I'm not following there. Like,
Oh,
I have
yeah.
a list, I'm getting
Sure.
the teams from the list, and then I want to get the current members from the list, and then I'm going to map over all them. Yeah, I got all that.
Yeah.
A
So the
couple
question
spots,
mark.
that question mark was like,
Yeah.
I haven't used that.
Yeah, so that's a cool new feature in JavaScript. We used to previously we would have to do that with like Lodash or something, but now you get to say it says I'm going to go down this chain until I hit a question mark, and I'm going to say, hey, does the next guy exist? And if it doesn't, I'll stop right here, and I'm not going to throw a giant error or blow up all your code. If it's there, I'm just going to continue. So it's really nice. The reason I threw it in there, actually, because in that use case, like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in there. But the reason that I put it in there and left it in there was as I was writing out that. So I wrote a lot of these components in kind of a weird way. I did like a very horrible example of TDD, of test-driven development, where I would build the test and then I would build the component, and so I put the cart before the horse on a lot of things, and so I just started playing, and so to get to where I needed to be in my object, I just started writing stuff out, and I would move the question mark down the line to where it needed to be before it started breaking, so that I could access the deeply nested object that I had. And so it was just there was simply a pattern of me writing. It's probably nothing I normally do, but it was just for fun. But I will use that question mark on data that is very questionable, whether or not, like if I'm getting content back from an API, let's say, and it's kind of like a optional value that may return, but JavaScript explodes if you tell it to look for an object and that object is not there. JavaScript will be dumb and just mess up everything. And so that question mark is a really awesome feature that is very new to JavaScript. I even forget the name of it. I forget what it's called.
It's optional chaining. I actually dumped a link in the chat in case it's helpful to look at that's the MDN doc for it.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for the link and thanks for the explanation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious. Is anybody doing anything really awesome with hooks? Dylan, I know you've done some cool stuff with hooks.
Yeah, I did manage to use context recently. It was kind of it's just a wizard for people to fill out some information and do some things. It was overkill to use something like Redux, um, but it had multiple steps, so you wanted the information to be able to go down into child components. So context was perfect for it. Still not entirely sure on how to test it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and
but yeah,
as you'll,
it was fantastic.
if you notice, I didn't include any tests for that. Probably
Yeah.
intentionally. No, it's
So
yeah, I haven't dug into that. I and really like half the tests are there and then half the tests are not there in my example, just purely because I didn't want to spend that much time writing tests, honestly. But yeah, I would be curious to put a little bit of extra time and try to write tests for use context. Yeah, yeah.
there's a site called usehooks.com. I don't know when the last time it was updated, but it looks like 2018, so not very recently. But it's got a bunch of custom hooks
Hmm.
that someone wrote in the past and just shared. Um,
Oh yeah.
so kind of useful.
I love that the Konami code is the first example as you go there.
Yeah, this is a very large collection from what I remember. There's more to this. There's a lot here. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That I haven't really used other people's hooks too often. Like off the top of my head, I really don't think I have. Um, but I've stolen a lot of code from somebody else's custom hooks and then put what I made them work for me, you know. But yeah, those are super simple. Actually, if you look at like the one thing I really enjoy about libraries is what can I get for super cheap, like really, really easy, because that makes me so much more productive in a lot of things. And hooks do that a lot. So like it's completely not necessary, but at the top of the demo that I built here, you know, so if you open this up and like and run it in its own, well, if you just look at the window, the running application, at the very top, there's a little black text that says user is idle, yes or no, or yes or nope. It's dumb and it's pointless. I don't need that. But that is just a hook that I pulled in for nothing. And it's running and it adds some stupid visual interest to the thing. So that's like a really, really silly example, but the same could be said true if I wanted to add animation. And I'm interested in something like the observer. I forget the name of it, but there's this really sweet CSS ability to like see when elements are on screen. And there's quite a few hooks that are built around that. And that ability like replaces a lot of very big JavaScript libraries that would be like scroll into view, you know. But anyway, yeah, there's just a lot of really good reusability with hooks.
Yeah, there was one on this usehooks.com that I used for use window size. If you're trying to do something where you're, I don't know, trying to, this is how I ended up doing it, but have your app sort of react to someone's dumb resolution or something like that, or they have something else open in the browser on the side, and it causes your site to squish or something like that. And then, yeah, I was able to just grab the window size if they resized it, and just a use effect inside a custom hook.
And that's actually a really good example too, because writing JavaScript that detects a viewport and has to go through all this annoying logic to check for viewport sizes sucks. Like I hate doing that, and I've done it so many times that it's. I mean, I hope that this kind of appraisal that we're giving, or praise that we're giving to hooks doesn't lead to some sort of like Java, a jQuery plugin type style library. Like I really hope. I mean, I guess if React went that way, it's not too bad because it is fun to write in React. But I am really digging custom hooks. And I just read. Oh, in fact, so I read this this tweet that was saying, yeah, everything you do from now on needs to be a custom hook. You know, put all your hook logic in a custom hook. And now there's even a ESLint, a linter that will check and make sure that everything you're writing is hooks, custom hooks. And it gets us, I like the pattern that it forces you in, because then it gets you a lot closer to an MVC. Well, I think we could probably call it, y'all. If there's anything else you want to talk about, that's cool. We could chat on Twitter or wherever else. Hopefully, we'll get some information out for what we're working on for next month, and we can see you all then. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for organizing it.
Thanks.
Next time.
Yeah.
Yep.